On August 12, 2026, we have a total solar eclipse in the sign of Cancer, falling in Ashlesha Nakshatra. This is the first of two eclipses this season, the second being a partial lunar eclipse on August 28 in Aquarius, in Ashlesha Nakshatra. Together these two eclipses open a karmic window of about 16 days. The effects of the solar eclipse begin building roughly a week before the actual date and continue for another week after, with the deeper results unfolding gradually over the following months. It's essential to note that these insights are grounded in Vedic astrology, which accounts for the approximately 24-degree difference from the tropical zodiac. What makes this particular solar eclipse stand out is the crowd of planets gathered in Cancer at the same time. Along with the Sun and Moon coming together for the eclipse, Jupiter and Mercury are also sitting in Cancer, which means 4 planets are activating this one sign together. Jupiter is exalted here, since Cancer is Jupiter's sign of exaltation, and that changes the flavor of this eclipse quite a bit. A solar eclipse on its own tends to bring a sense of something being covered up, blocked, or taken away for a short while. But when exalted Jupiter is sitting right there with the Sun and Moon, it adds a layer of protection, wisdom, and guidance to whatever the eclipse is trying to show us. So while this is still a serious eclipse and should be respected as one, it is not a purely harsh one. It carries the potential for genuine growth once the initial disruption settles down. Ashlesha Nakshatra itself is ruled by Mercury and is symbolized by the coiled serpent. It is a nakshatra connected with deep intuition, hidden knowledge, psychological depth, and sometimes a bit of cunning or entanglement. Eclipses happening here tend to bring things out of the shadows. Secrets, suppressed emotions, or truths that people have been avoiding often surface during this window. Since Mercury rules this nakshatra, and Mercury itself is also sitting in Cancer right now, communication, contracts, and the way we talk about our emotions become an important part of this eclipse's story as well. A solar eclipse occurs when the Sun and Moon align near one of the lunar nodes. This eclipse carries strong Ketu symbolism, emphasizing detachment, karmic release, and spiritual transformation. Ketu's energy is about detachment, letting go, and closing chapters that have already served their purpose. So this eclipse is not just about new beginnings, it is equally about endings that clear space for something new. Rahu sitting in Aquarius at the same time keeps the larger theme of this eclipse season connected to community, technology, and long-term goals, even while the solar eclipse itself asks us to deal with something closer to home first. Mars is also worth watching through this window. It is currently moving through Gemini and getting ready to enter Cancer itself by mid-September, where it will actually become debilitated. Mars in Gemini makes energy quicker, more restless, and more mentally scattered than usual. But the real test of follow-through comes once Mars physically enters this same sign a few weeks later. The wiser approach here is to notice what the eclipse reveals and let it settle, rather than rushing into a big decision the moment it comes up. Cancer rules home, mother, food, emotional security, water, and public sentiment at a larger level. So on a broader scale, this eclipse season often coincides with news connected to water bodies, coastal regions, food supply, housing, and shifts in public mood or family-oriented policy. Eclipse seasons have historically lined up with a rise in natural events like flooding and heavy rain too, given the watery nature of Cancer, so this is worth watching globally over the coming weeks. This eclipse will not be visible from India, since the path of totality passes over the Arctic, Greenland, Iceland, and northern Spain. In the sections ahead, we will go through what this eclipse means for each ascendant and moon sign, and I will cover the August 28th lunar eclipse in a separate video, so keep an eye out for that one too. To accurately assess the impact of these events, consider both your ascendant and moon signs. The ascendant sign provides insights into the timing of life events, while the moon sign reveals how you'll emotionally respond to these changes. Also, consider the position of your current Mahadasha Lord in your birth chart, as it can shed light on how these transits will influence the recurring themes of your dasha period. The specific outcomes will depend on your individual dasha and how these events interact with your natal planetary placements. Those under Rahu, Ketu, Sun, or Moon dasha periods can feel the effects of eclipses with the greatest intensity. Remember, the impact of eclipses varies for each person. Eclipse seasons aren't the most auspicious times to begin new projects, navigate complex relationships, make major career moves, or take other significant material decisions. They have historically been viewed as inauspicious events, often associated with negative omens for worldly matters. Instead, eclipse seasons offer an excellent opportunity to retreat, meditate, and delve into your inner world. They provide a unique chance to connect with your spiritual side. Be aware, though, that eclipse seasons can be quite turbulent, particularly in the days between a lunar and a solar eclipse. The true outcomes of these events usually become apparent over the next 6 months. Whether these outcomes prove favorable or unfavorable largely depends on your current dasha. If you face challenges during this eclipse season, remember that events may unfold and become clearer in the months ahead. Now that we have this context, let's dive into the predictions for each zodiac sign for this solar eclipse. For Aries, this total solar eclipse falls in your 4th house, and that makes it a very personal, close-to-home kind of eclipse. The 4th house governs your home, your mother, your property, your vehicles, and your general sense of peace of mind. Since the Sun and Moon are eclipsing right here, along with Jupiter and Mercury, this period is putting a spotlight directly on your domestic life and your emotional foundation. Something related to your house, your family situation, or your inner sense of comfort is likely to come up for review around this date, and it may feel more intense than usual because so many planets are involved at once. The Sun in your 4th house during this eclipse tends to bring matters connected with your mother, your home, or a senior family figure into sharper focus. There can be a health issue that needs attention, a property matter that finally gets resolved, or a shift in the emotional atmosphere at home. Because Jupiter is exalted right here as well, there is real support underneath this disruption. Jupiter is your 9th lord, connected to fortune and wisdom, so its presence in this house means that whatever gets stirred up now has the potential to actually improve your home life once the dust settles, rather than simply creating chaos. This is one of the more fortunate placements this eclipse could have taken for you, since exalted Jupiter softens the blow and adds long-term meaning to whatever change is coming. Mercury joining in adds a mental, communicative layer, so conversations within the family, paperwork related to property, or decisions about where you live may move forward around this time. You may also find yourself thinking more seriously about further studies or a course connected to your long-term goals, since Mercury and the 4th house together often bring learning and home life into the same conversation. Ketu's role in this eclipse is about release, and since Ketu sits in your 5th house, there is a secondary thread here involving children, creative projects, or romantic matters. You might feel a pull to detach from something in this area of life that has run its course, whether that is a creative project that no longer excites you, a romantic situation that needs honesty, or an old pattern with your own children that needs to shift. The core eclipse energy in your 4th house is asking you to let go of an old emotional setup at home so that something more solid can take its place, and this 5th house echo through Ketu adds a note of needing to release attachment to outcomes you cannot fully control right now. Mars is transiting your 3rd house of effort, courage, and communication while all of this unfolds, and since Mars actually rules your ascendant, this gives you real energy and initiative during this window, even if it feels a bit scattered or quick-tempered at times. You may find yourself wanting to act fast on whatever the eclipse reveals about your home or family, perhaps starting a renovation, having a direct conversation with a parent, or pushing forward on a personal project. The advice here is to use this drive for effort, communication, and short-term action, but hold off on anything permanent related to property or your living situation until closer to mid-September, since Mars is heading into your 4th house itself after this and will not be at its strongest there. Let the eclipse show you what needs attention first, then act once things settle. On the practical side, this is a good window to have honest conversations with family members rather than letting tension build silently. If you have been putting off a decision about moving, renovating, or handling a property document, information is likely to surface now that helps you make the call, even if it takes a few more weeks to finalize. Health-wise, keep an eye on your mother's well-being or your own emotional health, since the 4th house also relates to inner peace, and eclipses can bring old anxieties to the surface before they clear. Try not to make big real estate decisions in the exact days around August 12th, but use the insight you gain to plan carefully over the following weeks. If you have been meaning to fix something structural at home, a leaking roof, old wiring, or a long-pending repair, this is also a good window to notice it clearly, even if the actual work only starts after the eclipse period passes. Financially, keep receipts and documents connected to your home in order, since Mercury in this mix favors clarity in paperwork over leaving things loose and informal. If Aries is your ascendant, you are more likely to see these changes play out visibly, through actual events at home, a move, a repair, a family gathering, or a direct change in your living situation. If Aries is your moon sign, the experience will feel more internal, showing up as shifts in your mood, your sense of security, or old childhood memories and emotional patterns resurfacing for you to process. Moon sign individuals especially may notice their sleep or general sense of calm getting disturbed for a few days around the eclipse, and that is a normal part of this cycle rather than a sign that something is permanently wrong. Either way, give yourself permission to feel a bit unsettled around this date, since that discomfort is doing real work underneath the surface. By the time the lunar eclipse arrives on August 28th, you should already have more clarity about what your home and family life needs from you going forward, and the months after that tend to reward the people who use this window to strengthen their foundation rather than avoid it. For Taurus, this solar eclipse lands in your third house, which governs courage, self-effort, communication, siblings, short journeys, and the skills you use to push yourself forward in daily life. With the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury all gathered here for the eclipse, this becomes a period where your ability to speak up, take initiative, and put in real effort gets tested and then reshaped. Anything connected to writing, media, marketing, teaching, or any communication-based work you do is likely to see a noticeable shift in energy around this date, since the third house rules exactly this kind of activity. Jupiter rules your 8th and 11th houses, and having it exalted right here in your third house is a genuinely strong placement, since the 11th house lord sitting well in a house of effort tends to support real gains through the work you put in. This is a good sign for income connected to communication, content, or any project where you are putting your own skill and voice out into the world. The 8th house connection also means some of what unfolds now may feel sudden or unplanned at first, a message, an opportunity, or a piece of feedback that arrives out of nowhere and ends up shaping your next move. Mercury, ruling your 2nd and 5th houses, is also here, adding intelligence and sharper thinking to whatever you are working on, and often bringing in new ideas or a fresh approach to an ongoing project. Since Mercury also rules your 5th house of creativity and intelligence, this eclipse window can spark a genuinely clever idea or a new way of presenting your work that had not occurred to you before. The Sun, as your 4th house lord connected to home and your mother, being eclipsed in this house of effort suggests that your mother or your home situation may be tied into whatever bold action or decision you take around this time, perhaps through her encouragement, her influence, or simply the emotional weight of pursuing something new while she watches from the background. Ketu sits in your 4th house of home and inner security, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse shows up most clearly for you. There may be a pull to step outside your comfort zone right when your home life or your emotional need for safety wants you to stay put. This is the real tension of this eclipse for Taurus, the 3rd house asking you to act and speak boldly while the 4th house, through Ketu, quietly asks you to detach from old patterns of needing full certainty and comfort before you move. The healthiest response is to recognize that you do not need to feel completely settled at home before you take a courageous step forward, since waiting for total security may cause you to miss the window this eclipse is opening. Mars is transiting your 2nd house of wealth, family, and speech while this eclipse unfolds. And since Mars rules both your 7th house of partnerships and your 12th house of expenses, this transit adds heat to conversations around money and relationships. You may notice your words coming out sharper than intended, especially with family members, or a stronger urge to spend on something impulsively. Because Mars is also connected to your partnerships here, your spouse or a close partner may be directly involved in financial discussions or decisions during this window. The advice is simple. Choose your words carefully before speaking, especially at home, and avoid any major purchase or investment decision purely on impulse during the days right around August 12th. On the practical side, this is an excellent time to push forward a project connected to your voice, your writing, or any communication-based skill, since the eclipse energy combined with exalted Jupiter genuinely favors visible progress here, even if the days immediately around the eclipse feel a bit chaotic. Keep your speech measured with siblings and close family, since misunderstandings can escalate quickly under this influence. Watch your spending closely, and if a financial decision involves your partner, take a day or two before committing rather than deciding in the heat of the moment. Health-wise, minor issues connected to the throat, arms, or nervous energy can surface briefly, so rest when you feel overstimulated rather than pushing through out of stubbornness. If a sibling has been distant, or a short trip has been on your mind for a while, this window is also a natural point for that relationship to either improve through honest conversation or for the travel plan to finally take shape. Try to document your ideas as they come during this period, since the mental sharpness you feel now may fade once Mars moves further along and the pace of daily life picks back up. If Taurus is your ascendant, expect this to show up through real-world events, a bold conversation you finally have, a trip you take, or a visible change in how you communicate or assert yourself. If Taurus is your moon sign, the experience is more internal, showing up as restlessness, a stronger inner voice pushing you to speak your truth, or an emotional pull between wanting security and wanting to grow. Either way, use this eclipse to trust your own effort a little more than usual, since the planets here are genuinely on your side even though the process may feel unsettled for a few days. Give yourself the full 16-day window through the lunar eclipse on August 28th before you judge whether this period worked out well for you, since the third house rewards patience with consistent effort far more than it rewards a single dramatic move. For Gemini, this solar eclipse falls in your second house, and it comes with an extra layer of importance because your ascendant Lord Mercury is sitting right there in this house along with the Sun, Moon, and Jupiter. The second house governs your wealth, your family, your speech, your savings, and your personal values, and having your own chart lord involved in this eclipse makes the whole event feel more personal and more directly tied to your everyday life than it might for other signs. Whatever shifts around money, family dynamics, or the way you express yourself is likely to be felt strongly and to matter to you on a deeper level. The moon itself rules your second house, which adds real weight to the financial and family themes here. Expect a noticeable moment of clarity, or possibly some disruption, around your income, your savings, or a family financial matter, and take this seriously rather than brushing it off, since it is speaking directly to an area you personally control. Jupiter, ruling your 7th and 10th houses, being exalted in the same house is a strong support, since it connects your career and your partnerships to your finances in a favorable way, perhaps through a partner's support, a career opportunity that boosts your income, or good advice from someone in your professional circle. This is one of the more generous placements Jupiter could take for you this year, and it suggests that even if the eclipse itself feels sudden, the long-term direction of your finances and your professional standing is heading somewhere positive. The Sun, as your third house lord of courage and effort, being eclipsed here suggests that some financial or family matter may require you to speak up or take a bold step rather than staying quiet and hoping it resolves on its own. Mercury sitting here as your own ascendant lord means the way you personally handle this moment, calmly or reactively, honestly or avoidantly, will shape how smoothly the whole period unfolds for you. Ketu sits in your third house of courage, self-effort, and siblings, and this is where the detachment part of the eclipse plays out for you. You may feel less interested in proving yourself through sheer effort or through constant activity, and more drawn to simply being honest about what you want, especially around money and family. There could also be a shift in a sibling relationship, either a release of old tension or a natural distancing that happens without much drama. The core lesson here is that your second house concerns, your finances, your family, and your voice, matter more right now than trying to prove your worth through hustle and constant motion. So let the second house guide your priorities during this window rather than the pull toward third house busyness. Mars is transiting your own ascendant, your first house, while this eclipse unfolds, and this gives you a real surge of physical energy, drive, and assertiveness during this period. Mars rules your 6th and 11th houses for you, so this transit can bring both some friction, arguments, minor health flare-ups, or a short temper, alongside genuine gains through bold, direct action if you channel it well. You may feel more impatient than usual, quicker to react, and more visible to others simply through your energy and presence. Since this eclipse in your second house is asking you to think carefully about money and family before reacting, try not to let the fiery, quick energy of Mars in your first house push you into a hasty financial decision or a sharp comment you might regret. Use the physical energy for exercise, direct conversations, or finally starting a task you have been putting off, rather than for arguments. On the practical side, this is a good window to review your finances honestly, check your savings, look at any pending family financial matters, and have clear conversations rather than assuming everyone already understands your position. If you have been avoiding a conversation with a parent or family member about money, this eclipse period often brings the opening to finally have it, and Jupiter's exalted presence here means the outcome is more likely to work in your favor than not, provided you approach it calmly rather than reactively, given how strong Mars is making you feel right now. Watch your head and general physical safety during this window too, since Mars in your first house combined with an eclipse can occasionally bring minor accidents or injuries if you are moving too fast or not paying attention. Try to slow down in traffic, be careful with sharp tools, and give your body proper rest even if you feel like you can push through on pure energy alone. Financially, this is also a reasonable window to start a new savings habit or reorganize how you track your money, since the second house responds well to structure introduced during a reset period like this one. If Gemini is your ascendant, this eclipse is likely to show up through real events, a financial development, a family conversation, or a visible change in how confidently you speak up for yourself. If Gemini is your moon sign, you may feel this more as an inner shift in how secure or insecure you feel about money and family, along with a stronger physical restlessness in the body thanks to Mars sitting on your moon sign itself. Either way, this eclipse is genuinely working in your favor if you use it to get honest about your finances and your values, rather than letting the fast pace of Mars distract you from the deeper second house work this period is asking of you. For Cancer, this solar eclipse is happening directly on your own sign, which makes it the single most personal and most powerful placement of this entire eclipse for anyone in the zodiac. The Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury are all sitting right on your first house of self, body, identity, and general life direction. If Cancer is your moon sign specifically, this is your own natal moon being involved, which traditionally calls for a little extra care around your emotional and physical well-being during the days right around August 12th. This is not a subtle background influence, this is a direct reset of who you are and how you show up in the world. Moon rules this first house, and having your chart lord right in your own ascendant is a strong signal that some part of your identity or self-image is going through a genuine transformation right now. This is the kind of transit that often marks a clear before and after in how you see yourself, so try not to resist it too hard even if the process feels uncomfortable at first. The Sun, ruling your second house of wealth, family, and speech, being eclipsed here connects your sense of self very closely to how you speak and what you say about yourself during this period, so be mindful that whatever you express strongly right now, about yourself or your finances, tends to carry extra weight and may even feel prophetic later. Jupiter is exalted right here in your ascendant, and this is genuinely one of the best placements Jupiter could take for you all year, since it is your 6th and 9th house lord, connected to overcoming obstacles and to your father, your fortune, and your dharma. This gives you real protection and grace moving through whatever this eclipse brings, and it suggests that any health issue or obstacle that surfaces now has a strong chance of resolving in your favor, not against you. Mercury, ruling your 3rd and 12th houses, adds mental sharpness along with a pull toward foreign connections or hidden matters, so do not be surprised if a conversation or opportunity involving distance, travel, or something previously kept quiet comes up around this time. Ketu sits in your 2nd house of wealth, family, and speech, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse becomes clear for you. You may find yourself caring less about accumulating things, less interested in impressing others through what you own or say, and more focused on simply being authentically yourself. There can also be a natural distancing from a family member or a shift in how attached you feel to your usual routines around money and speech. Combined with the eclipse sitting right on your ascendant, the overall message here is one of shedding an old version of yourself, an old identity, an old way of presenting who you are, so that something more genuine can take its place over the coming months. Mars is transiting your 12th house of endings, foreign connections, and rest while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars is actually your most auspicious planet, ruling both your 5th and 10th houses, this transit carries more positive potential than a typical 12th house passage would. This can support foreign travel, work happening behind the scenes, or quiet effort that pays off later rather than immediately. At the same time, the 12th house does ask for some caution around your health, your sleep, and unnecessary spending, so do not ignore fatigue if it shows up, and try not to let stress push you into impulsive purchases. Since Mars will actually move into your own sign by mid-September, where it becomes debilitated, treat this period as preparation rather than a time to force big personal decisions immediately. On the practical side, this eclipse window calls for genuine rest and reflection rather than pushing yourself hard. Pay attention to your physical health, get proper sleep, and avoid overexerting yourself in the days right around August 12th. If a health concern comes up, take it seriously and get it checked, but also trust that Jupiter's presence here gives you real support in recovering well. This is also a good time to think honestly about your relationship with money and material comfort, since Ketu's placement in your 2nd house is nudging you to define your self-worth by something more solid than what you own or spend. Career-wise, quiet groundwork done now, even if it does not show immediate results, is likely to matter later once Mars settles and the eclipse energy clears. Avoid making a big public statement about a new identity, a new look, or a new direction on the exact day of the eclipse, since Vedic tradition generally favors waiting a few days after an eclipse before starting anything you want to last. Once August 17th or so passes, you are on much firmer ground to launch whatever this period has been quietly preparing you for. Since Cancer is both your ascendant and your moon sign in this scenario, the difference is really about intensity rather than direction. If Cancer is your ascendant, expect this to show up through very visible personal changes in your appearance, your health, your general direction in life, or a decision that redefines how people see you. If Cancer is your moon sign, the experience runs even deeper emotionally, touching your core sense of who you are and how safe you feel being yourself. And it is worth being gentle with yourself through this particular window, since you are the one this eclipse is speaking to most directly of anyone in the zodiac. Give yourself permission to move slowly through the next few weeks rather than expecting instant clarity. For Leo, this solar eclipse falls in your 12th house, while Ketu itself is sitting exactly on your own ascendant and moon sign. This is actually a two-part story for you. The visible eclipse cluster of Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury is happening in your house of rest, foreign connections, and letting go, while Ketu, the very planet responsible for this being a solar eclipse in the first place, is parked directly on your own sign. Ketu has been moving through Leo for a while now, and this eclipse acts like a peak moment within that longer-running phase. So if you have already been feeling a pull towards solitude, spiritual reflection, or simply less interest in the spotlight over recent months, this eclipse intensifies that same energy for a few days. Your moon rules your 12th house, and it being placed in its own house points toward themes of foreign connections, private matters, or unexpected expenses coming into focus, along with a genuine need for more rest than usual. The Sun, as your own ascendant lord, being eclipsed in this house of withdrawal is significant, since it suggests a period where you may prefer working quietly behind the scenes rather than being front and center, even if that feels unusual for a Leo. This is not a weakness, it is simply the chart asking you to recharge in private before your next visible chapter begins. If a trip abroad, a visa matter, or a connection to a foreign institution has been sitting on the back burner, this window is a natural point for movement on that front, even if the final outcome takes a little longer to fully materialize. Jupiter, ruling your 5th and 8th houses, being exalted here brings a genuinely supportive undertone, connecting your creativity and intelligence to deeper research, foreign opportunities, or spiritual study, so any quiet learning or reflection you do now is likely to pay off later in a very real way. Mercury, ruling your 2nd and 11th houses, adds a financial and social layer, so expenses connected to travel, education, or something private may come up during this window. Ketu sitting directly on your ascendant and moon sign is the real headline for you this eclipse. This placement often brings a temporary dip in confidence, a sense of not quite recognizing yourself, or simply less interest in maintaining your usual image in front of others. Physically, you might feel a bit low on energy, or vague about your health without anything seriously wrong. This is one of the more spiritually significant placements in the whole zodiac chart, and while it can feel disorienting, it is also an invitation to detach from needing constant external validation and to reconnect with who you are underneath all the roles you usually play. Do not mistake this quiet phase for a permanent loss of your natural confidence. It is temporary, and it tends to return stronger once Ketu and this eclipse energy settle down. Many Leo individuals find that this kind of Ketu period ends up clarifying exactly which parts of their identity were built for other people's approval and which parts are genuinely their own, and that distinction becomes valuable long after this eclipse itself has passed. Mars is transiting your 11th house of gains, networks, and friendships during this period, and since Mars is one of your most auspicious planets, ruling both your 4th and 9th houses, this transit genuinely supports material gains through your social and professional connections. You may find good financial news, support from a friend or elder sibling, or an opportunity that comes through your existing network right around this time. This creates an interesting contrast with the introspective 12th house and Ketu energy elsewhere in your chart. Practical gains flowing in through your outer connections even while your inner world is asking for quiet and reflection. The healthy way to hold both is to accept support and good news when it comes, without feeling like you need to be loud or highly visible to receive it. On the practical side, prioritize rest and do not push yourself to perform or be the center of attention during the days right around August 12th, even if that goes against your natural instinct. If a friend or professional contact offers help or an opportunity through your network, say yes without overthinking it, since Mars is genuinely working in your favor there. Be gentle with your own self-image right now. Avoid harsh self-criticism if you are feeling less confident than usual. And remember that this dip is part of a natural cycle rather than a permanent state. Health-wise, get enough sleep, and if you have been putting off a routine checkup, this is a reasonable window to get it done quietly. Meditation, journaling, or simply spending unstructured time alone will likely help you process this phase far more than trying to talk your way through it with others. If Leo is your ascendant, this shows up through visible rest, a step back from the spotlight, or quiet developments happening away from public view, alongside real financial or social gains flowing in from your network. If Leo is your moon sign, the Ketu influence lands even closer to your emotional core, and you may feel unusually introspective, less certain of your identity, or drawn to spend time alone processing things you cannot fully explain. Trust this process, since Ketu on your own sign during an eclipse of this size is rare, and the clarity that comes after this phase passes tends to be worth the temporary discomfort. Give yourself through the end of August before expecting to feel fully like yourself again. For Virgo, this solar eclipse falls in your 11th house of gains, income, friendships, and hopes fulfilled, and this is actually one of the more fortunate placements this eclipse could have landed in for you. The 11th house is naturally connected to material progress, and having the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury all gathered here means a strong concentration of energy around your income, your professional network, and the people who support your goals. Even though eclipses always bring some disruption, the house they are landing in for you is genuinely one built for gain rather than loss. Moon rules this 11th house, and it being placed in its own territory suggests a noticeable shift in your income or your circle of friends around this time, something that may feel sudden at first but tends to work out in your favor once it settles. Since the moon governs your mind as well, expect your hopes and expectations around money and friendship to feel unusually active during this window, with old wishes resurfacing or a clearer sense of what you actually want from your career finally coming into focus. The Sun, ruling your 12th house of expenses and foreign connections, being eclipsed here connects spending or foreign matters directly to your gains, so you might find yourself investing in something connected to travel, education abroad, or a private venture that later brings a return. Jupiter, ruling your 4th and 7th houses, being exalted right here in your 11th house is an excellent sign for happiness through partnership or property-related gains, whether that means support from your spouse or partner, a good property decision, or simply more contentment at home flowing from good financial news. This is genuinely one of the stronger placements Jupiter could take for you this year, so treat any positive news that arrives now as something worth building on rather than doubting. Mercury, as your own ascendant lord and the ruler of your 10th house of career, sitting in this same house means your professional reputation and your income are closely linked right now, and visibility among the right people could open a door for you during this window. Ketu sits in your 12th house of endings, foreign connections, and quiet retreat, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse plays out for you. There may be a pull to withdraw from something you have been doing purely out of obligation, a habit, a private worry, or an old fear that has been running quietly in the background. 12th house Ketu placements often bring a genuine interest in spiritual practice or a desire to simplify life, so do not be surprised if you feel less interested in material striving for a few days even while the 11th house is technically bringing you gains. Some Virgo individuals may also notice more vivid dreams or a stronger pull towards solitude than usual during this exact window, which is a normal part of a 12th house Ketu passage rather than anything to worry about. This is a healthy tension, since it reminds you that the gains this eclipse brings mean more when they are not chased out of anxiety, but received with a settled mind. Mars is transiting your 10th house of career and public standing during this period, and since Mars rules your 3rd and 8th houses for you, connected to effort and sudden transformation, this transit brings bold, assertive energy to your professional life. You may feel a strong urge to push a career matter forward, take on a leadership role, or assert yourself more directly with superiors or authority figures. Used well, this supports real career progress, especially alongside the gains already building in your 11th house. Used poorly, it can create friction or conflict with someone in a position of authority, so channel this energy into decisive action rather than into arguments or ego clashes at work. On the practical side, this is a good window to review your financial goals, reconnect with your professional network, and follow up on any pending opportunity connected to income or career visibility. If a friend or colleague offers to introduce you to someone useful, take them up on it, since the planetary support here genuinely favors expanding your circle right now. At the same time, keep an eye on unnecessary expenses, especially anything connected to travel or a private indulgence, since the 12th house influence through Ketu and the Sun can quietly drain resources if you are not paying attention. Career-wise, be assertive but diplomatic with authority figures during this window, since Mars gives you the drive but not always the patience needed to handle a delicate professional conversation well. If you have been waiting on a raise, a bonus, or a specific piece of good news related to money, this is a reasonable window for it to arrive, though allow a few days after the exact eclipse date for the full picture to become clear rather than expecting instant confirmation on August 12th itself. If Virgo is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through real career developments, a financial opportunity, or a visible shift in your professional standing. If Virgo is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this internally, through a change in how secure or hopeful you feel about your future, alongside a quieter pull toward introspection and simplifying your life. Either way, this eclipse leans favorable for you overall, and the months following it tend to reward the effort and networking you put in during this particular window. Stay open to opportunities that arrive through people rather than searching for them alone. For Libra, this solar eclipse falls in your 10th house of career, public status, and professional reputation, which makes this one of the more visible and consequential eclipse placements for you. With the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury all gathered here, this period is putting your career and public life under a direct spotlight. This can show up as a significant announcement, a shift in your role, a change in how you are perceived professionally, or a decision point that redefines your public direction for the months ahead. Moon rules this 10th house, and having it in its own territory points to a genuinely important professional moment, one that may feel sudden but is likely connected to something that has been building for a while beneath the surface. Since your moon governs your mind and this is the house of career, your emotional state and your professional life are unusually intertwined right now, so notice how much your mood is riding on work-related news during this window. The Sun, ruling your 11th house of gains and income, being eclipsed here connects your career directly to your earnings and your network, suggesting that whatever shift happens professionally now has real potential to boost your income or expand who you know in useful ways. Jupiter, ruling your 3rd and 6th houses, being exalted right here in your career house is an excellent sign for overcoming any professional obstacle, competition, or rival that has been giving you trouble, and it also supports success that comes through consistent effort rather than luck alone. This is a genuinely strong placement, and it suggests that any professional challenge you have been quietly dealing with is more likely to resolve well than not over the coming weeks. Mercury, ruling your 9th and 12th houses of father, fortune, and foreign connections, being placed here suggests your career path may be touched by guidance from an elder or father figure, a foreign opportunity, or further education that adds credibility to your professional standing. Ketu sits in your 11th house of gains, income, and social networks, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse shows up for you. You may find yourself losing interest in a particular professional circle or feeling less concerned with how your success looks to others, even as your actual career situation shifts. There can also be a natural distancing from a friend or group you have outgrown, or less attachment to a specific financial goal you once cared deeply about. Some Libra individuals may notice a long-standing professional connection quietly fading during this window, which is simply the chart clearing space for a more aligned network to take its place. This 11th house Ketu placement is a useful reminder that career progress means the most when it is not chased purely for the approval of your network, and letting go of that need can actually make the 10th house developments land more smoothly. Mars is transiting your 9th house of father, fortune, higher learning, and long journeys while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars rules your 2nd and 7th houses for you, connected to wealth, family, and your spouse or business partner, this transit adds some intensity to those areas through the lens of your father or a long-distance matter. You may notice friction or a strong opinion clash with your father, a mentor, or your partner around a financial decision, a trip, or a course of higher study, especially if money and travel plans intersect. Because Mars can act as a functional maraca influence for Libra ascendant, connected to matters of wealth and partnership, it is worth handling any disagreement in this area with patience rather than letting pride escalate a small issue into a bigger one. On the positive side, this transit can also bring a sudden opportunity for travel, further education, or a piece of good advice from someone senior that directly benefits your career trajectory. On the practical side, this is a strong window to move forward professionally, whether that means having a direct conversation about your role, applying for something new, or simply letting your recent work speak for itself in front of the right people. Jupiter's exalted presence here means any obstacle or rival situation at work has a real chance of resolving in your favor if you stay consistent rather than reactive. Be mindful of how you speak with your father or a senior mentor figure during this period, since Mars can make conversations here sharper than intended, so choose calm timing over reacting in the heat of the moment. If a financial decision involves your spouse or business partner, especially one connected to travel or education, take the time to align on it together rather than deciding unilaterally. Keep important professional documents, contracts, or certificates organized during this window as well, since Mercury's involvement favors clarity in paperwork connected to your career right now. If Libra is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through visible career events, a public recognition, a job change, or a clear shift in your professional direction. If Libra is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this internally, through a change in how confident or uncertain you feel about your path forward, along with emotional undertones connected to your father or a mentor figure. Either way, this eclipse asks you to take your career seriously right now, since the planetary weight here is genuinely significant, and the choices you make, or the events that unfold around August 12th are likely to shape your professional story for a good while after. Trust the effort you have already put in, since Jupiter's presence here means it has not gone unnoticed. For Scorpio, this solar eclipse falls in your 9th house of father, fortune, dharma, higher learning, and long journeys, and this is one of the more powerful and genuinely fortunate placements this eclipse could have taken for you. The Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury are all gathered here, activating your beliefs, your connection to your father or a guru figure, and your overall sense of luck and direction in life. 9th house eclipses often mark a turning point in how you see the world, sometimes triggered by a journey, a teacher, or an event connected to your father. Moon rules this 9th house, and it being placed in its own territory suggests a significant moment connected to your father, a mentor, or your own belief system, one that could reshape how you think about your purpose going forward. Since the moon governs your emotional world, this shift is likely to feel deeply personal rather than abstract, touching your sense of faith or direction at a level that goes beyond ordinary daily concerns. The Sun, ruling your 10th house of career, being eclipsed here connects your professional path directly to fortune and higher guidance, meaning career growth right now is likely to come through wisdom, education, or a senior figure's support rather than through pure hustle alone. Jupiter, ruling your 2nd and 5th houses of wealth and creativity, being exalted right here in your house of fortune is an outstanding placement, genuinely one of the best combinations this eclipse offers anyone in the zodiac. This can point toward real financial luck, a creative breakthrough, or wonderful news connected to children, alongside a strong sense of being guided in the right direction. Mercury, ruling your 8th and 11th houses, being placed here suggests gains that come through research, inheritance, or a piece of information connected to travel or higher study, so pay attention to anything unusual that comes your way through these channels. Ketu sits in your 10th house of career, status, and public image, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse becomes clear for you. You may find yourself caring less about traditional markers of success or public recognition, and more drawn to work that feels meaningful even if it is less visible. There can also be a sudden shift in your career direction, a job change, a step away from a role that no longer fits who you are becoming, or simply less interest in impressing others through your professional status. This 10th house Ketu placement often nudges people toward more spiritually aligned or independent work, so if you have been feeling pulled away from a conventional career path, this eclipse gives that feeling extra weight. Mars is transiting your 8th house of transformation, sudden events, and hidden matters while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars rules your own ascendant as well as your 6th house of health and disputes, this is a genuinely intense placement worth taking seriously. Mars in the 8th house can bring sudden developments, deep psychological shifts, or events that feel out of your control, and combined with it ruling your health and enemy's house, some extra caution around physical safety, risk-taking, and confrontations is warranted during this specific window. Avoid unnecessary risks, drive carefully, and think twice before entering a heated confrontation, since this energy can escalate quickly. On the more positive side, this same placement gives you real power to overcome a long-standing obstacle, competitor, or health issue if you approach it with focus rather than recklessness, since Mars here has genuine intensity to offer when it is directed with intention. This is also a strong window for research, investigation, or getting to the bottom of something that has felt hidden or unclear, since the 8th house rewards exactly this kind of deep, focused digging when Mars is present. On the practical side, this is a meaningful window to reconnect with your father, a mentor, or your own sense of purpose, and any conversation or decision connected to higher education, travel, or belief tends to carry extra significance right now. If a financial opportunity or piece of good news arrives, especially connected to children or creative work, trust it, since Jupiter's exalted presence here is genuinely working in your favor. At the same time, be deliberate rather than impulsive with anything involving your health, physical safety, or a conflict with someone else during this exact window, given how much intensity Mars is carrying in your 8th house. If your career feels like it wants to shift direction, let that feeling inform your longer-term plans rather than forcing an abrupt decision on the day of the eclipse itself. Consider postponing any elective medical procedure or major physical risk until closer to September if you have a choice in the timing, simply to let this particularly charged window pass first. If Scorpio is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through visible events connected to your father, your beliefs, or a career shift, alongside real caution needed around health and safety. If Scorpio is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this internally, through a deep shift in what you believe or trust, and an emotional intensity that runs beneath the surface even when things look calm outwardly. Either way, this eclipse carries real weight for you, mixing genuine fortune with genuine intensity, so move through this window with both gratitude for the blessings arriving and care for your own well-being. Let the 9th house guide your long-term direction, while you handle the 8th house intensity with a steady, unhurried hand, and let both work together rather than pulling you in opposite directions. For Sagittarius, this solar eclipse falls in your 8th house of transformation, sudden events, shared resources, and deep change. This is one of the more intense placements this eclipse can take for anyone, since the 8th house naturally deals with things that feel out of our direct control, but the specific planets involved here give you more protection and long-term benefit than you might expect from a typical 8th house eclipse. Expect something significant to shift beneath the surface of your life around this time, even if it does not announce itself loudly at first. Moon rules this 8th house, and it being placed in its own territory suggests a genuine turning point, something connected to shared finances, an inheritance, a health matter, or simply a deep internal shift in how you relate to uncertainty itself. Since the moon also governs your emotions, this period may bring a stronger than usual awareness of your own fears or vulnerabilities, and sitting with that honestly rather than pushing it away tends to serve you better through this particular window. The Sun, ruling your 9th house of father and fortune, being eclipsed here connects your sense of luck and your relationship with your father to whatever transformation is unfolding, so do not be surprised if a conversation or event involving your father carries unexpected weight right now. Jupiter, as your own ascendant lord and the ruler of your 4th house of home and mother, being exalted right here in your 8th house is genuinely one of the most reassuring placements this eclipse offers anyone in the zodiac. An exalted ascendant lord in the 8th house often points toward transformation that ultimately strengthens you, supports long-term security, and can even be favorable for matters connected to property, inheritance, or healing. Mercury, ruling your 7th and 10th houses of partnership and career, being placed here suggests your relationships or your professional path may go through a sudden shift or renegotiation, one that reshapes the terms you are working under going forward. Ketu sits in your 9th house of father, fortune, dharma, and higher learning, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse plays out for you. You may find yourself questioning a belief you have held for a long time, feeling less connected to a guru or mentor figure who once guided you, or simply losing interest in a philosophy or worldview that no longer fits who you are becoming. This can also show up as the natural conclusion of a long journey, a course of study, or a phase connected to higher learning. Rather than resisting this shift, let it happen, since 9th house Ketu placements often clear space for a more authentic, personally earned belief system to take root. Mars is transiting your 7th house of marriage, partnerships, and public dealings while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars rules your 5th and 12th houses for you, connected to romance and expenses, this transit brings real passion and intensity to your closest relationships. This can show up as a strong romantic development, a heated disagreement with your spouse or business partner, or a financial matter connected to a shared venture that needs direct attention. Since the 7th house governs how you deal with others directly, try to channel this Mars energy into honest, assertive communication rather than letting frustration build into an argument that damages trust. This is also a period where a business partnership or important negotiation may move forward quickly, so be prepared to make decisions with less lead time than usual, and try to have your key terms clear in your own mind before you sit down to discuss them. If you are single, this transit can also bring a sudden, magnetic romantic connection, though it is worth taking a little extra time before making any serious commitment, while the eclipse energy is still settling around you. On the practical side, treat this window as an invitation to deal honestly with anything you have been avoiding around shared resources. Whether that is a joint account, an inheritance matter, or an unresolved financial arrangement with a partner. Jupiter's presence here means the underlying support is there even if the process feels uncomfortable, so trust that working through this now leads somewhere genuinely better. Be extra patient and measured in conversations with your spouse or business partner during the days around August 12th. Since Mars can make even small disagreements feel more charged than they need to be. If a belief or philosophy you have held for years starts to feel less true to you, give yourself permission to explore that shift rather than forcing yourself back into an old framework out of habit or loyalty alone. Physically, since the 8th house also touches longevity, use this window to address any health concern you have been postponing rather than ignoring it further, treating it as routine maintenance rather than something to fear. If Sagittarius is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through tangible events involving shared money, partnerships, or a health-related matter that ultimately resolves in your favor. If Sagittarius is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this as an internal transformation, a shift in how you handle fear and uncertainty, or a quiet questioning of beliefs you once held without doubt. Either way, this eclipse asks you to trust the process of change itself, since the protection built into this placement genuinely favors you coming out the other side stronger than before. Give the full transformation time to unfold rather than judging it too quickly from where you stand today, since 8th house shifts of this size rarely reveal their full shape in just a few weeks. For Capricorn, this solar eclipse falls in your 7th house of marriage, partnerships, and how you deal with others directly, and this makes it one of the most personally significant placements for your relationships this year. With the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury all gathered here, this period puts a direct spotlight on your spouse, a business partner, or a significant relationship, and a real decision point or turning point connected to partnership is likely during this window. Moon rules the 7th house, and it being placed in its own territory suggests a genuinely important relationship moment, whether that means a marriage decision moving forward, a business partnership taking a new shape, or an existing relationship going through a period of honest reassessment. Since the moon governs your emotional world, whatever unfolds here is likely to feel deeply personal, touching your sense of emotional security through the lens of another person rather than staying purely practical. The Sun, ruling your 8th house of transformation and hidden matters, being eclipsed here connects your partnership directly to deeper change, suggesting your spouse or partner may be involved in something transformative right now, whether that is a shared financial matter, an in-law situation, or simply a deepening of intimacy and trust between you. Jupiter, ruling your 3rd and 12th houses of effort and foreign connections, being exalted right here in your partnership house is a genuinely favorable sign, suggesting that bold effort put into a relationship or partnership right now is well supported, and there may even be a connection to someone from a different background or a foreign context involved in this story. This is a strong protective influence, and it suggests that even the more intense 8th house undertones connected to your partner are ultimately guided toward a good outcome. Mercury, ruling your 6th and 9th houses of service and fortune, being placed here suggests a partner may help you resolve a lingering dispute or offer guidance connected to your larger sense of direction and luck. Ketu sits in your 8th house of transformation, sudden events, and shared resources, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse becomes clear for you. There may be a release of old fear or anxiety around uncertainty and control, particularly connected to money you share with someone else, or a long-held worry about security. This can also show up as closure on an inheritance matter, a shared account, or a psychological pattern where you have been holding on too tightly out of fear rather than trust. Many Capricorn individuals carry a quiet need to control outcomes, and this 8th house Ketu placement gently loosens that grip during this specific window, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. Combined with the 7th house activity, the message here is clear: real partnership requires a willingness to release some control and trust another person, and this eclipse is nudging you toward exactly that. Mars is transiting your 6th house of health, disputes, daily work, and service while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars rules your 4th and 11th houses for you, connected to home and gains, this is actually a reasonably strong placement. The 6th house is traditionally a house where Mars performs well, giving you the ability to push through obstacles, win disputes, and make real progress at work through direct effort. You may find yourself successfully resolving a lingering conflict or competitive situation during this window, and gains connected to your daily work or service are likely. The caution here is around your health and around arguments at home connected to work stress, so keep an eye on both. But overall, this Mars placement supports you taking decisive action rather than holding you back, and colleagues are likely to notice your resolve during this period. On the practical side, this is a strong window to have an honest conversation with your spouse or business partner about where things stand and where you want them to go. Jupiter's exalted presence here means the outcome of this conversation is more likely to strengthen the relationship than damage it, even if the conversation itself feels a little uncomfortable in the moment. If a shared financial matter, an inheritance, or an old fear about control and security has been sitting unresolved, this is a good window to finally address it directly rather than avoiding it further. At work, use the assertive Mars energy to resolve a pending dispute or push through a competitive situation, but be mindful of not carrying that same intensity home and taking it out on family members. If you are single and considering a serious commitment, this eclipse period is likely to bring real clarity about whether the relationship in question is genuinely built for the long term, so pay attention to what becomes obvious rather than talking yourself out of it or explaining it away. If Capricorn is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through real relationship events, a marriage-related decision, a business partnership development, or a visible resolution of a long-standing conflict at work. If Capricorn is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this internally, through a shift in how much trust and control you are willing to release in your closest relationship, along with a quieter emotional processing of old fears around security. Either way, this eclipse rewards you for choosing honesty and trust over control, and the partnerships that survive this window honestly tend to come out considerably stronger. Let this be the season you practice leaning on someone else a little more than usual, and notice how much lighter that actually feels once you allow it. For Aquarius, this solar eclipse falls in your 6th house of health, daily work, disputes, and debts, and this is actually a house where eclipses can do real good, since it governs the obstacles and challenges you are trying to overcome. With the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury all gathered here, this period brings a strong focus to your health, your work routine, or a lingering dispute, and the overall planetary support suggests you have real strength to resolve whatever comes up rather than simply being worn down by it. Moon rules the 6th house, and it being placed in its own territory suggests a significant development connected to your health, your daily work, or an ongoing conflict that has been sitting unresolved. This might be the moment a health issue finally gets diagnosed and addressed, a dispute gets settled, or a debt finally gets cleared. Since the moon rules this house, your emotional well-being is tied closely to how this situation resolves, so give yourself credit for handling it rather than judging yourself for having the issue in the first place. The Sun, ruling your 7th house of marriage and partnership, being eclipsed here connects your partner directly to this house of challenges, so your spouse or business partner may be involved in helping you through a health matter, a dispute, or a work-related situation right now. Jupiter, ruling your 2nd and 11th houses of wealth and gains, being exalted right here in your 6th house is a genuinely excellent placement, since exalted Jupiter in this house strongly favors victory over obstacles, debts, or competitors, often with a financial benefit following close behind. This is one of the better placements this eclipse offers anyone, and it suggests that whatever challenge surfaces now is more likely to end in your favor than not. Mercury, ruling your 5th and 8th houses of creativity and transformation, being placed here suggests a creative or romantic matter may get tangled up with your daily routine or a work situation, requiring some careful untangling. Ketu sits in your 7th house of marriage, partnership, and public dealings, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse plays out for you. There may be a natural distancing in a close relationship, a business partnership that quietly winds down, or simply less need to define yourself through your closest relationships right now. This is not necessarily a sign of anything ending badly, it is more a signal that you are being asked to feel complete within yourself rather than relying entirely on a partner for your sense of identity. Aquarius individuals often value independence deeply already, and this transit simply brings that instinct closer to the surface for a while. If a relationship has genuinely run its course, this eclipse gives you the clarity and the emotional distance to see that honestly rather than staying out of habit alone. Mars is transiting your 5th house of children, romance, creativity, and speculation while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars rules your 3rd and 10th houses for you, connected to effort and career, this transit brings bold, creative energy to your professional ambitions. You may feel a strong urge to pursue a creative project, take initiative with a romantic interest, or push forward on something career-related that requires courage and self-confidence. Since the 5th house also governs speculation and financial risk-taking, it is worth being cautious about impulsive investments or gambles during this window, since Mars can make a risky decision feel more appealing than it actually is. Used well, this energy supports a bold creative or career move, especially one connected to how you present your ideas or your talents to the world. Parents may also notice a child being more headstrong or energetic than usual during this window, which calls for patient guidance rather than a power struggle, and the same applies if you are mentoring or supervising someone junior at work. On the practical side, take any health concerns seriously right now, and get it properly checked rather than assuming it will resolve on its own, since the planetary support here genuinely favors real healing if you take action rather than avoiding it. If a dispute or debt has been unresolved for a while, this is a good window to finally address it directly, since Jupiter's exalted presence strongly favors a resolution that benefits you. Be honest with yourself about whether a partnership, romantic or professional, still serves who you are becoming, rather than staying in it purely out of comfort or obligation. Financially, avoid speculative risks during the days right around August 12th, and instead channel your creative energy into a project you can build steadily rather than one that depends on luck alone. If you work in a service-oriented role or manage people day to day, expect this window to bring extra clarity about which parts of your routine actually work and which parts need to change, so use that clarity to make one concrete adjustment rather than overhauling everything at once. If Aquarius is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through visible resolutions at work, in your health, or in a close relationship. If Aquarius is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this internally, through a stronger sense of your own resilience, and a quieter emotional release around needing others to complete you. Either way, this eclipse leans genuinely favorable for you, provided you take direct, honest action on whatever it brings up rather than avoiding it. Trust that the obstacles surfacing now are appearing precisely because you are ready to clear them for good, and that the effort you put in during this window will not need to be repeated later. For Pisces, this solar eclipse falls in your 5th house of children, romance, creativity, and intelligence, and this turns out to be one of the positive placements this eclipse offers anyone in the entire zodiac. With the Sun, Moon, Jupiter, and Mercury all gathered here, this period activates your creative gifts, your intelligence, your romantic life, and matters connected to children, and the specific combination of planets involved gives you real reason to feel optimistic even in the middle of eclipse season. Moon rules this 5th house, and it being placed in its own territory suggests a significant and emotionally meaningful development connected to children, a creative project, or a romantic matter. This can be sudden good news, an important decision about education or a creative direction, or a romantic connection that feels unusually significant. Since the moon governs your emotions, whatever unfolds here is likely to feel deeply moving rather than purely practical, touching your heart as much as your plans. The Sun, ruling your 6th house of health and disputes, being eclipsed here suggests any competitive or challenging situation you are navigating right now is connected to your creative or intellectual work, perhaps a competition, an evaluation, or a test of your skills that you are well positioned to handle. Jupiter, as your own ascendant lord and the ruler of your 10th house of career, being exalted right here in your 5th house is genuinely one of the standout placements in this whole eclipse, for anyone in the zodiac. Having both your ascendant lord and your career lord exalted together in the house of creativity and intelligence is a rare and powerful combination, often pointing toward a real creative or intellectual achievement that also elevates your professional reputation. Mercury, ruling your 4th and 7th houses of home and partnership, being placed here suggests your home life or a close partner is directly connected to whatever creative or romantic development is unfolding. Ketu sits in your 6th house of health, disputes, debts, and daily work, and this is where the letting go part of the eclipse plays out for you. There may be a release from a conflict that has been draining your energy, a debt that finally clears, or simply a loss of interest in continuing to fight a battle that was never going to be worth winning. This can also show up as a health worry easing once you stop obsessing over it, since 6th house Ketu placements often work best when you stop pushing so hard against a problem and instead trust that it is resolving on its own timeline. Pisces individuals sometimes carry other people's burdens as if they were their own, and this transit is a gentle reminder that you are allowed to set a struggle down without feeling guilty about it. Combined with the very fortunate 5th house activity, this eclipse seems to be clearing away an old obstacle specifically to make room for the creative or personal good news building elsewhere in your chart. Mars is transiting your 4th house of home, mother, and property while this eclipse unfolds, and since Mars rules your 2nd and 9th houses for you, connected to wealth and fortune, this transit brings real drive to matters connected to your home or a property decision. This can be a strong period for finalizing a property purchase, a renovation, or a decision connected to where you live, especially one tied to your family's wealth or a piece of good fortune. The caution here is around arguments at home connected to money or a father figure, so keep communication calm even when you feel strongly about a decision, since Mars can make you more insistent than the situation actually calls for, especially when the topic touches an old family expectation around property or inheritance. On the practical side, this is an excellent window to pursue a creative project, submit your work for evaluation, or take a chance on something connected to your talents, since the planetary support here is genuinely strong. If there is good news brewing, connected to a child, a creative endeavor, or a romantic relationship, trust it and let yourself enjoy it rather than waiting anxiously for it to fall apart. If you have been dealing with a lingering dispute, debt, or health worry, allow yourself to loosen your grip on it a little, since this eclipse favors resolution through release rather than through continued struggle. If a property or home-related decision is on the table, this is a reasonable window to move forward, provided you keep the conversation with family calm and collaborative rather than forceful. Students and anyone pursuing further education should also pay attention to this window, since exam results, admissions news, or a decision about a course of study is likely to land favorably right now, rewarding the effort you have already quietly put in. If Pisces is your ascendant, expect this eclipse to show up through visible creative or professional achievement, good news connected to children or romance, and real movement on a home or property matter. If Pisces is your moon sign, you are more likely to feel this as a deep emotional lightness or joy connected to creativity, love, or family, alongside a quiet sense of relief as an old struggle finally eases. Either way, this is one of the more genuinely fortunate eclipse placements in the whole zodiac, so allow yourself to receive the good news this window is bringing rather than second-guessing it. You have earned the ease this particular alignment is offering you, and there is no need to brace yourself for a catch that is not actually coming. As we conclude this episode, please keep in mind that these insights are based on the sidereal zodiac system used in Vedic astrology, which differs from the tropical system by approximately 24 degrees. These are general predictions. The real impact depends on your dasha cycles and your individual birth chart. For a personalized analysis or consultation, feel free to reach out. If you found this video valuable, please like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And now, you can also hype this video to boost it within the community. Your support helps this knowledge reach more people who may benefit. Thank you for watching. Stay aware, keep learning, and keep shining bright.